Hey, hello, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today we have a very special edition of my Touch of History series, which if you are unfamiliar, I talk about kind of ad nauseum European history topics to include things like the Soviet Union, the Third Reich. I'll talk about modern history as well. So if you're interested in any of these topics, I highly suggest that you check out my other videos. Today I'm going to be talking about some notable people who aided in the escape efforts for Jewish people under the Third Reich. And what's going to make this particularly special is I'm going to be joined by my very good friend and fellow YouTuber, who also happens to be my editor, on the Upside Up. If you haven't checked out his channel before, I highly suggest you do. I'm going to link it in the description below, and I'm also going to throw up a card somewhere up there of one of my favorite videos that he's put out. He covers sort of a lot of things. He'll cover like media analysis. He talks about living in Japan as a non-Japanese person, like his work experiences that he's had. He talks about anime. He talks about like mechanics in games. And so like one of my favorite ones is when he's talking about how effective different media's version of healing mechanics would be at healing the hole in his heart. So I'm going to link that one specifically somewhere up there. I don't know which side it's on because I can't remember if this camera is mirrored or not. So just look up. But if you are ready, buckle in. So I'm going to start out with Sofka Skipwith, and I'm sorry if I said that name wrong. She is Russian and I don't speak Russian. But Sofka Skipwith was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, and she was a member of the royal Russian family when she fled Russia after the fall of the imperial family, and she lived in France and then eventually Great Britain. She happened to be in France when France fell to the Third Reich in 1940 and was subsequently imprisoned before being moved to the Vittel detention camp. While she was in that camp, she tried to alleviate some of the stress. It's not really a good word, but she tried to just make people's lives better as best that she could with what she had access to while she was in the camp, to include organizing cultural activities. She created a camp library. And importantly, she maintained contact with French resistance leaders on the outside, as well as members of the Foreign Office and of the Red Cross. To these people, she would send these smuggled messages that would include things like what's actually going on in the camp, as well as a list of about 250 Jewish people who were holding South American passports at the time that were deemed by the Third Reich to be illegitimate and thus were being detained. She was trying her best to go initially through the like official channels, through like the Foreign Office, to find some way to legitimize these passports in the eyes of the Third Reich. It was difficult. She had pleaded with her contacts on the outside to find any way to validate these passports, and she wanted to save them from deportation or further movement within the camp system. Unfortunately, the machinations were very, very slow, and so she ended up not actually receiving any responses. Believing that she had lost her chance to save the Jewish people being carted off to Auschwitz, she did successfully smuggle a child under a camp fence to safety in a Red Cross box. What she didn't know at the time, but did find out decades later, was that her efforts were not a total loss. Because of her list, at least 50 Jewish people were taken off the train and exchanged for German POWs, and they were sent to Palestine. So the second person I'm going to talk about is Irenava Sendler. Irina Sendler was a social worker at the welfare department of the Warsaw municipality when World War II began. Despite German occupation, the department was still able to continue to take care of people around the city, which allowed Irina Sendler a unique opportunity to help the Jewish people in her city until the ghetto was stood up in 1940. After the segregation, getting into the ghetto became very, very difficult. You had to have official paperwork. You had to have an official reason to be there if you yourself were not Jewish or a part of the camp's like staff system. But she did manage to gain entrance under the auspices of an inspection of the sanitary conditions of the area, which is really like an ironic concept to me. And I'm sure it was not lost on her either. Once she was inside, she began to organize a way to smuggle people out of the ghettos and set them up in like hiding places, especially children. Over the years, Sendler became a member of the Council for the Aid of Jews, which was an underground organization through which she rehomed Jewish children in various orphanages in Warsaw, Chatomau, and Torkowice. This word, I'm so sorry, I don't speak Polish either. She was unfortunately arrested in 1943, but she did manage to hide a list of coded addresses of children in the care of the council, as well as a pretty decent amount of money to help pay the activists who helped assist her in the liberation of Jews. While the total number of children she helped escape is unknown, the number is believed to be in the hundreds, if not potentially up to 1,000, which is nothing to sneeze at. And now, to you.
Hey, hello, hi. I did the thing. I'm on the Upside Up. I'm the editor. Usually don't show my face, but I'm trying something new. Thank you to Tsuki for letting me be a part of this. I want to highlight some teachers who did some really great things, seeing as I am a former teacher, maybe future teacher. If you've seen any of my videos, you know that they include some teaching. These two people committed, to paraphrase The West Wing, some extraordinary acts of humanity and rather comparatively normal acts of teacherhood. You'll notice that neither of these people themselves were Jewish. I think none of the people we've presented today are. They're just people who can tell the difference between right and wrong, which I think is really important in times like these. First is Lois Gundin, an American French teacher from Goshen, Indiana, who just happened to come to work with the Mennonite Central Committee in southern France in 1941. She had joined the Mennonite organization called Secours Mennonite en Enfance in Lyon. And she was sent to establish a children's home in Connaught Plug, I think is how that's pronounced, continuing this channel's tradition of not properly pronouncing things. This kids center kind of became a safe haven, both for Spanish refugee children and then later Jewish children who were smuggled from Rivsalt, which was the closest nearby internment camp. A lot of her acts in general were more, let's say, day to day, rather than big explosive things. There is one story that I want to highlight in particular, in which while the kids were out for a walk, going to get some exercise, a policeman came to arrest 3 of her students. She informed him that kids aren't here right now. You can't take the kids; they're not here. And said pretty much, come back this afternoon. When the policeman came back, she had put their clothes in the wash and said, the kids' clothes aren't dry. I'm not just going to send these children with what they're wearing. You have to come back later when their clothes are dry and ready to go. Nothing's packed. And the policeman this time did not come back. I think that, for the time period in which this happened, when people would just show up, or policemen would just show up and take people, to say something as simple as "you got to come back later, they're not ready," is an extraordinary act of heroism. The next is Jean Demont, who was a teacher in Brussels at the time when the Jewish community was setting up its own kindergartens and schools following acts of segregation from non-Jewish pupils. Demont started off as just a teacher, but along with Fela Perelman, who's a leading figure in organized rescue efforts, she soon started to help rescue Jewish kids. Since the number of children becoming instant orphans was unfortunately rising at a pretty catastrophic rate, it became necessary for an adult to escort some of these kids to hiding places. Damon not only took them to places where they wouldn't be discovered, churches and things like that, But she also made sure to keep in touch with these kids, sending them letters and communications to make sure that they were safe and that they felt comfortable in as much as they could in situations like this. As roundups started to become more aggressive, they also started to hide women and children. They would hide the women in Belgian households as maids with fake paperwork and ration cards, which were given by Perelman's husband. Damon made sure that the women were comfortable in their jobs. Sometimes the jobs didn't quite work out, so the women had to be moved again. But she also made sure that when women and children had to be separated, that the women always knew where their children were. Your kids in this church and whatever. It made sure that they could feel that sense of comfort, because you couldn't always hide women and children together, right? That was pretty rare, actually. As things got more dangerous, she kicked more ass. Towards the end of the war, she became a social worker with the Scouters d'Hiver, which let her help to disappear collaborators of the Jewish underground. She then helped the Brussels Liberation Forces to transport arms on her bike and worked as an intelligence agent in the Belgian army. Finally, after the war, when most people could have just retired and quit, she helped those Jewish children to either find their parents or find new homes if they were among the unfortunate orphan community. And after she moved to the US in 1946, she still helped to fundraise for Israel. Overall, an amazing person, both of them. Amazing people. Thank you so much to Tsuki for letting me pop in and talk a little bit about some of my heroes. We wanted to try to do a little tag team thing. I hope you guys enjoyed it. To answer your question preemptively, no, I don't know what's going on with my hair, and I don't know why it be like that. Now that I'm pretty sure she's not watching, I wanted to show you guys this. It's a vital bracelet. I got it free from my company because nobody else wanted it. We did some work with Bandai, and so they. Okay, you remember like the Pokemon Walker thing? So Digimon had a version of that, right? And what's really cool about this is you can actually.
Neat. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today. This one was a little bit more lighthearted in the face of a very dark period of history. I think it's really important to recognize and acknowledge the people who helped in the escape of the imprisoned Jewish people of the Third Reich. Without people like them, the death toll would have been even higher and the devastation would have spread even further. So I challenge you to leave a comment in the comment section about somebody else that you have heard of or read of, or maybe have like thought that you wanted to look into, who aided in the escape of Jews during this period of time. You can leave some interesting tidbits about these individuals that we already talked about, or suggest somebody new. I love reading about that little sliver of light in a really dark time. I think it's an important thing to not forget to look for, especially when you're reading or researching about just particularly heavy periods of time in our history. It's a good reminder that humanity isn't always all bad. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, maybe consider subscribing, ring that little bell or whatever it is I'm supposed to say. At the end of this video, there's going to be 2 suggestions for you on my little like outro card. One of them is going to be the playlist to the rest of my videos, the rest of my essays about European history, and then the other one is going to be whatever it is that YouTube thinks that you're going to be interested in listening/watching. I hope you guys all had a good time. I did, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye. Oh, there's a bug. No. Whew. I got it. Okay. Oh, no, I didn't. Damn it.
An app, right? And store your Pokemon